Hello, 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 everybody. It's your favorite Weebo trip, Svetlana. Here with today is Liberal Sanity Project and Irving Twin, and they're going to be discussing the Canadian bill, the one that everyone got their panties into a bunch over, C-16. I guess I'll let them make their positions known, and we'll go from there. I'm just going to be the quiet, moderating facilitator. Uh, let the blood sports commence, gentlemen.
All right, who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll start here because basically Jordan Peterson got famous from this, right? And I pretty much believe him. I've been looking into it. I don't think he's wrong. You can go ahead.
Oh, that's your opening statement?
Yeah. I mean, people know Jordan Peterson more than they know me and the bill itself, right? So I'm sure they have an idea of what.
Then I want to reiterate what Jordan Peterson's claim was. And since you started on that, I want to make it clear that we're not here, as of yet, to discuss whether or not Bill C-16 is good law or bad law. We are simply here to discuss what the scope of provincial courts have or anything else. And it's for a very specific claim. And that specific claim was that Bill C-16 allows for individuals to be jailed for misgendering people. And that is simply not true, and we need look no further than the text of the law to understand that.
Good start? Is that...
Yeah, I open it to you.
Is there... Yeah, okay. Oh, hey, chat. I see you, Tennessee. Yeah, okay. So here's the wording of the law. Can I actually screen share some of this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Bill C-16. We see this? Yeah? An act to amend the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Criminal Code. Her Majesty, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Where is it? Yeah, okay. So here, you can see the underlined sentence. It just adds gender identity or expression into the Human Rights Act. And here again, it's all the same stuff. Prohibited grounds of discrimination are race, national, or ethnic origin, yada, 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 and now it includes gender identity or expression. And I see what you're getting at. In the criminal code, we can circle back to that at some point if you like, but this thing is the problem, is the human rights tribunals, okay? Gender identity, here's the policy, okay? Discrimination happens when a person experiences negative treatment or impact, intentional or not. And harassment is a form of discrimination. It can include sexually explicit or other inappropriate comments, questions, jokes, name calling. Yeah. And it's ongoing behavior. Where is it? Unwelcome and ongoing. Okay. These things are so vague, and this one here, the discrimination, experiences negative treatment or impact. This is not objectively saying that an action is wrong or punishable. It's saying the way the apparent victim feels determines whether or not it was wrong. And here, I'll give an extreme example because I train people for a large company. And let's say I have two trainees and they both look like men to me. So when I'm teaching them, okay, guys, we're going to do this. Okay, guys, time to move over here. Okay, guys, let's stay safe. I call them guys all week. No one has to tell me I'm wrong. One of them who identifies as a woman doesn't have... Oh, I'm still presenting, sorry. Or still. All they have to do is go to the tribunal and say I did that I misgendered them unwelcomely and ongoingly, and I can be dragged before the tribunal.
Yeah, so I think that's a gross simplification of the process. And here's a natural problem with debate. This is a natural problem with debate. If you're the one who is stuck explaining things, generally, you're losing. Because it's easier to make blanket assertions that are only half truthful at best than it is to debunk misinformation. So, bear with me. Canadian law functions similar to American law in that their court systems are divided between provincial governments and federal governments, much in the same way that the United States is divided between state governments and federal governments. Bill C-16 is federal law, and it amends portions of the Human Rights Act, which is federal law. And it forbids discrimination on the grounds you already covered, and a whole host of other criteria. Discrimination is specifically defined within the law's parameters. Misgendering somebody is not a form of discrimination under the legal definitions provided by the Human Rights Act. The following are forms of discrimination under the Human Rights Act: denial of goods, services, facility, accommodation, denial of commercial premises or residential accommodation, employment applications, advertisements, employee organizations, discriminatory policy or practice, equal wages, equal assessment of work, and establishment. None of those discriminatory practices protect a person from being called mean things. They protect a person from being discriminated against in housing and in work, in so many words.
Okay. But this was criminal, right? Like
No.
criminal.
No. The Human Rights Act is civil law. You pointed
Okay,
that out yourself when you said
Yeah.
there's a criminal code, and we can circle back to it later.
Okay. Let me share this also, because if I'm not mistaken, even though it's federal, it's going to be the provincial tribunal that takes care of it.
No. I can tell you already that's incorrect.
Well, either way, this is the HRTO rules. This is the model for the federal, what's it called? Human Rights Tribunal, which are often referred to as social justice tribunals, which is terrifying in and of itself. Okay, but here's powers of the tribunal. Where the hell was it? Yeah, the tribunal will determine how a matter will be dealt with and may use procedures other than traditional adjudicative or adversarial procedures. Keep in mind, this is, civil, it's extrajudicial, right? So if they make, there's something else here, I can't remember which one it is, that they determine and direct the order in which evidence will be presented, they can actually limit the evidence or submissions on any issue. This tribunal has the power to just not let you mount a defense for yourself.
So that's absolutely not true. I mean, first and foremost, that you even bring up the Social Justice Tribunal is a little disappointing, given that the tribunal in Ontario cannot hear federal cases. Bill C-16 is federal law. The Social Justice Tribunal is a provincial court. They would never hear a C-16 case. They don't have the jurisdiction. And you can say... Well, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Well, you can say the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal is modeled after the Ontario one all you want, but that's the fact is that they have different jurisdictions and different cases to review. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal hears C-16 cases, and if you like, we can visit the process for getting to that tribunal. But elsewise, the functions of an irrelevant tribunal with no jurisdiction on the matter gets us no closer to proving your assertion. Your assertion was that Bill C-16 jails people for misgendering people. So I have to ask, why would you bring up an irrelevant adjudication process to prove your point?
These things are all modeled after each other, and they function in very much the same way. Now, in a civil case, you can be fined or be made to pay the complainant. If you don't pay or you can't, what happens?
Is that a question for me?
It's a question in general, right?
Well,
if you can't pay, they have the power to throw you in jail, right? And
No.
considering that this is on a federal, you may have to give up your job if you were working for, say, a federally regulated company. It's going to be very difficult for you now to pay any fine or any damages without a job to have your wages garnished. And the resulting outcome is going to be that, you can get thrown in jail for misgendering somebody.
Okay, did you research whether or not the Human Rights Tribunal has jail powers?
I'm certain they do.
Then you're incorrect. So I looked into this claim, and I actually set out to prove you right, believe it or not, instead of wrong. And I couldn't find anything like that. You cannot be jailed by the Human Rights Tribunal because they possess no powers of imprisonment. And that's because they're a civil court. So the only way you could be jailed is if your case is appealed by virtue of non-compliance with a tribunal ruling, which sends the matter to federal courts who can review the case. Specifically, they can't jail you for misgendering somebody. The only jailing power that conceivably they would have is contempt of court. And even that comes after an exhaustive process of options. So to put it bluntly, this idea that you can be jailed under this act requires you to intentionally try to be jailed under this act, which you can't. And if you are, it will never be for misgendering somebody, but for contempt of court.
No, okay, you're absolutely right. I'm wrong. The punishment for the misgendering won't be to be jailed. But if you get found in contempt because you can't or don't pay it, you end up in jail, and it's all because you misgendered somebody.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Then theoretically, you can be jailed for anything, right? If a court orders you to do something and you don't do it, then it doesn't matter what laws say what.
Well, I guess technically, but I mean that's the problem.
Well, you're arguing technically.
Oh dear God. Okay. If I misgender somebody and then I can't pay and I end up in jail, I don't think that's right. I don't think I should be fined or pay damages to somebody.
Okay, I agree.
Right.
If that's what the law did.
Then, and also in the situation, end up in a position not able to pay and therefore be in contempt of court. Right? It's a much longer chain. It's not one-to-one. There's stuff in between that happens, but yeah, because you misgendered somebody, you can end up in prison.
So would you say it's accurate to say you can also end up in prison for not paying a parking ticket?
Yes.
Running a stop sign?
Sure, I guess.
Playing music too loudly?
That's far less likely, I think, but...
They're all less likely. You're arguing in things that aren't likely at all, as if it's a certainty. Now, I hate repeating myself, but they don't have arrest powers. The federal courts overseeing them have arrest powers. They are simply civil adjudicators. And if they rule against you, the only power they have is to order you to cease a practice or place a fine on you. If you can't pay a fine, your assets can be seized. If your asset seizures don't meet the damages, then your wages can be garnished. And if you quit your job, they can place a lien against your name, urging banks not to do business with you. Simply put, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal has no jail power whatsoever. They only have the power to levy civil damages against you, not criminal ones.
See, but these other things, like paying the tickets or running the stop sign. Sorry, I hear myself. Is that better?
You sound good to me, dude. You sound sexy.
I'm starting to hear an echo. Lispy, is that from you?
Is it?
It might be.
Do you still hear an echo?
No, not anymore.
I'm pretty confident it's not me, but go for it.
All right.
Yeah. Could be me. I don't hear it, though. Okay.
God damn it, Irving. Fix your shit.
Yeah, I know. Look, for running a stop sign, that is a very specific act, right? That is an offense. No parking, that's a very specific act, right? Volume levels or whatever, that's specific, and it's something that somebody does. This, hey guys, if somebody gets offended by the fact that I said that, right, that in and of itself can lead to all of this shit.
It can't. I don't know why you keep saying that. Nothing in the law prescribes that as an option. Like, you're right. You can be jailed for running a stop sign by your logic, and by playing music too loudly, and all these other things that are specifically prescribed by law. So I don't understand why you would take that another step and assume that you can be jailed for things that aren't prescribed by law.
Were we not looking at the policies?
Yes, we did, and they were civil policies.
Right. So in a civil suit, you can be fined or made to pay damages, and if you can't pay those damages or the fines, you're in contempt and end up in jail.
So if you can't...
But the thing...
Well, I'm sorry, I have to stop you here, because this is going to be the second time you repeat this, and it's not true. If you can't pay fines, and if you can't pay damages, and your wages are garnished, and you still can't meet your obligations, you can file a motion to have your damages adjusted by the court. They can hear it. Hardship is a valid reason to not pay a fine. But again, that has nothing to do with whether or not the act will send you to jail for misgendering somebody. I must stress, misgendering somebody is not one of the prescribed discriminatory practices.
In the policy, harassment is a form of discrimination, right?
No.
Unwelcoming and ongoing behavior that insults, demeans, harms, or threatens a person in some way. And that's based on a person experiencing negative treatment or impact. It's how they feel.
I think you're looking up criminal harassment and not discrimination as prescribed by the Canadian Human Rights Act. The Human Rights Act that describes, and you can get with Weebo because I actually sent her what the definition of discrimination under the act was, and it was denial of goods, services, facility, accommodation, all these things that relate to being denied some access to commercial or residential accommodation.
This thing that I'm looking at right now, this is the Ontario Human Rights Commission policy on preventing discrimination of a gender.
Cool. But again, I have to stress, that's an inferior court and it has nothing to do with C-16.
Enemy sniper spotted, over.
Except that this is the same policy that the federal court relies on.
Which federal court? They have their own law they have to defer to.
Here, yeah, let me find it. Sorry.
I think what you're trying to say is that this is the policy that the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal has to rely on. And that might be true if there wasn't a set of guidance for certain parts of the law written as far as C-16 goes. But that's just not... I mean, again, discrimination is very clearly defined by C-16. I'm sorry, by the Canadian Human Rights Act. So I don't see why, when it comes to issues of discrimination, they would be deferring to a lower court opinion on it when discrimination is clearly defined in the law. I mean, does that make sense? I don't know. I could word that a different way. I'm not sure I got that through articulate.
No. I'm hearing you, and yeah, it seems. See, no, it's a. All I'm finding is the Ontario one, like Canadian Human Rights Tribunal policy. I can't pull it up, and I don't know why. But that's what I mean is
Yeah, I'll send you
that
something
policy,
on...
that policy basically copy paste and replace Ontario with Canada. That's how the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal got its policy. It just took a good one.
Can I interrupt for a hot second?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you, Blessed Silence, for the 100 and okay. Running a stop sign, a parking ticket, and playing music too loud are against the law, and you can, in extreme, be jailed for it. Should misgendering be, through contempt, able to land you in jail? I think this was meant for you, Lisby.
Contempt should be able to land you in jail. Misgendering shouldn't be a crime.
So I have a question, because we never went over this before the stream started, but I have a whole bunch of questions from the chat. At some point, we're going to ask them if they are relevant.
Can I have 2 minutes? I've just got to go do something.
Sure.
I'll be right back. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. I guess we can answer questions then while we're waiting.
Or we could talk about like Pokemon or something.
I mean, do you want to talk about Pokemon?
Well, I mean, you don't know the gender of the Pokemon in the first generation.
God fucking
I'm
damn
just
it.
saying, you name them something and they could be a totally different gender. Other than Nidoking and Nidoqueen, right? Like, other than that, fuck.
The extent of my knowledge of Pokemon is it ends and it begins at Pokemon Platinum on the DS from like maybe 12 years ago. I don't know.
Yep. That's most normal
So-
people.
Yeah.
Let's get these questions.
Okay, so Navarre 202 asks, not here to discuss if it's good or bad law. Well, that wasn't really a question, but kind of a question.
Well, like I said, we can discuss that, and I think that would be a more fruitful conversation to have, but he is insisting
Whether
on
or
this
not it's a
claim.
legitimate...
Yeah, he's insisting on a very specific claim instead of whether or not the law... Like, there's a more substantive conversation to be had, but we can't have it unless we can establish the facts first, and that's what I said during the Chaos 120 stream.
Yeah. Same question. Another question from the same person, Navir 202. Can you ask Liberal Sanity how he says it doesn't allow for people to be jailed, assuming from his operating system that that's opening statement, that's his position. Literally, any law can be held to you being can lead to you being jailed. Sorry, I fucked that up.
I
My
don't
bad.
think I said any law can lead to you being jailed. I actually said the opposite. There's two kinds of laws. There's civil law and there's criminal law. Criminal law
Well-
can lead you to being jailed. Civil law can't.
I would actually challenge you on this. There are 3 different types of things that are within the purview of the government to punish you for. So there's criminal law, there's also civil law, but there's also a third one, which is village ordinances or township ordinances, essentially. They're regulations within the township that you're within. They're not
Yeah.
necessarily
laws. There's so much as they
Yeah,
are.
your specific city's law. I understand that.
Yeah.
Most people
Which
aren't
is-
going to be prosecuted by city law in general. That seldom happens. If you commit a crime, it's usually because you're prosecuted under state law if you ever commit a crime.
Yeah, I spotted an enemy soldier. Over.
I would beg to differ on the grounds that while I was on internship, we actually did pick up a chick and find her about $1,900 for simple possession of paraphernalia, not even just possession of weed. It was just, a few bongs and shit, and it was a hefty fine, man.
Did she go to jail?
Well, she was processed within the courthouse or the
There's
jail.
prosecution
I'm sorry,
is for
the
criminal for
police
crimes.
department.
Like prosecution doesn't. You don't get prosecuted by civil law, right? That's. Well, I mean, I guess you can. Yeah, I guess you can. It's more like you approach it from like a hearing when it comes to civil law. Like you can make cases for civil law. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
All right. So we have actually a whole bunch of questions here from the chat. Sorry, chat. They kind of pile up, and we never talked about when it was that we were doing it. So this is like a good time to do this. Beware atheists. Can you ask them what the government should do about American children of illegal immigrants? I don't think that was a very relevant question,
I'm not
so I think we're
answering
just gonna skip it. Okay. David Karatiad could why should governments have the power to compel speech?
Who's that for? Me?
Why shouldn't they?
I
Well,
I think it might be a question about why this law
Oh.
is, something that should be put into should be implemented.
Can I make a
I
suggestion
think
real
it's one
quick?
of those. Yeah.
Can we deal with the questions near the end now that Irving's back? And because
Yeah.
I actually think this is a little bit related to something Irving said, so I think
Okay.
it's probably important he take the reins on this.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can take a break from questions until the end. That's chat. If you have any questions, remember I am collecting them, and we will answer them at the end. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Tell me, Irving,
Yeah.
why should government allow compelled speech, or shouldn't?
why shouldn't?
Yeah, what's your answer on that?
Because the ability to speak freely is basically your ability to discuss anything, right? If speech is compelled in such a way that we have to say things a certain way, then we might not actually get to the root of any given problem. We might not be able to because there's things we can't say or things we must say.
Yeah, and I generally agree with that, but you're under this mistaken idea that C-16 is compelled speech, and I'm interested to hear that. Why you think that?
Well, now you're saying it's never going to happen, or the process is so long that it's incredibly unlikely to happen.
No, I'm saying it's
But-
not going to happen at all.
But I'm fairly certain it's possible
Why?
that
Hang
you
on,
miss
why are you sure it's possible?
because of the way it's worded, because the policies. Like I can't find a Canadian human rights policy on gender identity. All that keeps coming up in the search is the Ontario policy, and the Ontario policy is pretty vague, to the point that if somebody feels harassed by me in my job, that they can take me before the tribunal, and if I can't or don't pay, it's possible to be held in contempt of court and end up jailed because I misgendered somebody.
Has this ever happened?
No, it hasn't. But the fact that there's a chain of events that can happen like that has to be removed.
Sure.
I don't think that should be possible in the country.
I agree, but I don't think that it is possible in the country, so I would rest easy.
I'll agree. It seems very, very unlikely, but I don't agree that it's not possible.
So, Irving, I've watched every video on C-16 on your channel.
Oh.
You're not bothered by compelled speech. You don't have a single video decrying oaths of allegiance to the country, like pledges. You don't have a single video on laws requiring that you affirm the truth under penalty of perjury. There's no videos that complain about laws having subpoena powers that can force you to testify. All of these are instances of compelled speech. So if your concern is compelled speech, where are those videos?
Yeah, I'll make a couple. How's that?
Sure. You're
All
actually
right.
bothered with these instances of speech, right?
Most of these seem pretty reasonable because they're not consistent and ongoing. Right?
Wait,
I don't
subpoenas
have-
aren't consistent and ongoing?
No.
Affirmations of truth under penalty of perjury aren't consistent and ongoing?
Yeah, it's like a thing that happens one time and then it's done. Right? That you come to court, you tell the truth, right? Then when you leave from court, do whatever the fuck you want. But here, ongoing, as long as I'm dealing with people at my job or whatever, in perpetuity, I must call a man a woman, whether or not I know that the man identifies as a woman, right?
Right.
And that's yeah.
That's not an issue of I mean, even if that were in the law, that's not an issue of compelled speech. That's an issue of free speech, which is different. And can I expect you to stake a claim here and now that if your concern is free speech, tell me that you're against the country of Netherlands banning burqas.
I am.
Can you loudly proclaim that you don't support it when Donald Trump talks about revoking citizenship for flag runners?
I do not support a burqa ban. You should be allowed to wear whatever the fuck you want.
Fuck yeah. All right, my man.
Conversely, when you go in to get your picture taken, right, for government stuff, I'm sorry, we kind of got to see your face. That's crazy.
Maybe. What about Donald Trump when he talks about revoking citizenship for flag burners? You're against that too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
That's
so I'm curious though, if you want to really fight against abuses of speech by institutional powers, would you make videos on these topics?
Yeah. Sure, why not?
These are recent. These are major. These are actual threats to free speech. You've got I don't know, 6 videos on C16. By the way, they were all very fun to watch.
Thanks.
The testimony
so that's big
was
praise.
really dry.
You're making fun.
Yeah, I spent like 4 hours watching the Senate testimony from Jordan Peterson and Theron Meyer and all these different dates, and I wanted to blow my brains out by the end of it. It was very hard to watch, and I think that's actually part of the problem with why people misunderstand the law so easily is they get sound bites from people like Jordan Peterson instead of watching the testimony of people given before the Senate panel who make it clear that this isn't a free speech issue, such as the Canadian Minister of Justice. But anyway, the issue of compelled speech is moot. C-16 doesn't compel speech. And even if we take your argument that you could be jailed for misgendering somebody, you can't. But let's say you can. That's not compelled speech because you're not compelled to speak. You're not forced to properly gender anybody. Your assertion is that you're penalized for misgendering somebody, not that you're forced to properly gender anybody. That's not compelled speech. You understand the difference?
Yeah, sure, there's the technical difference, but it's like it's a split hair, man.
It's not. I mean, that's night and day. It's like differences with speech like that breach the peace. So let's say that the United States Congress passes a law banning the use of the word fire in a crowded theater. Does that mean that you're compelled to say that there's no fire when you enter a theater? Right? The answer is no. It's not compelled speech. It's banned speech. There's a difference. Anyway, sorry, I went on a rant there. You got anything else to add, sir?
It sounds to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong here. It sounds to me that you're saying it's not compelled speech because I can do it anyway. Even if I get dragged before the tribunal, yada, 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 chain of events, end up in jail.
No, I'm saying it's not compelled speech because even if what you're saying is true, the government's not forcing you to say anything. That's why I brought up the fire in a crowded theater example. Like it's against the law to declare that there's a fire in a theater. Does that mean that when you go into theater, you have to declare there's not a fire? Like the inverse isn't true, even if we take your example or your claim is true. I mean, I butchered that, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but again, to me, it feels like it's a split hair. This man identifies as a woman, so I don't have to call him anything, right? But here we are talking about him, so if I'm going to...
You can. I believe the social justice tribunal that you like to reference actually laid out that you don't have to... you could just call people by their name, but...
Sure, but here we are.
I hesitate to bring that up.
The word him,
yeah,
because that's just the way it works. So if I choose to discuss the man or woman or whoever, right?
Sure.
And to not get in trouble, if I want to avoid getting in some kind of trouble, then I must call him this thing. Is that not compelled speech?
No, I would say that's banned speech. There's a difference.
I guess, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
But
I gave,
again,
like
that's-
the Pledge of Allegiance, right? If you have to pledge of allegiance to the American flag, do you have to declare that every other flag is null and void or something? Like there's a difference. I know it's splitting. It seems like it's splitting hairs, but it's a night and day difference. Anyway, C16. Like this is the most feels-based argument, and it's a little bit why I was hesitant to dive into the issue. Because your opinion is immaterial here. Your opinion doesn't matter. My opinion doesn't matter. The question on C16 is feelings disguised as facts, and I don't want to say that you feel like an SJ. Like this is what I think. I think you feel like SJWs are taking over, and they're making draconian laws that you don't like, and then I think you'll twist the meaning of whatever law you don't like to fit that narrative, even if the law itself is innocuous. And we're not here to debate your feeling. We're here to discuss claims of fact. And the only people whose feelings matter when it comes to this are legal experts. It is their opinions that will determine the application of C16. Do you have any legal scholars who support your claims?
There was at least one in those videos that you were watching.
Yeah, Jared Brown or something like that, or Phil Brown or some. The lawyer with Peterson, right?
Mm-hmm. And another law professor that Peterson did like a debate. I can't remember his name though.
Yeah.
He looks like Eric Roberts.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
What if I told you that those lawyers are outside the consensus? Would you change your mind?
Well, no. I mean,
Why? You've got a field of experts saying one thing and a single expert saying another. Why do you go with that one expert?
it's not generally like a consensus when someone sets precedent. You know what I mean? It's one person, one case, one judge, and it gets done. You know what I mean? So if they're saying, oh, the way that you're saying it's so unlikely that it's impossible, and then you got a couple people going, no, it's possible, right?
I think the only people doing that are the lawyers for Jordan Peterson.
And like looking at the chain and the way they describe it, yes, sure, you're poor, you're down on your luck, whatever, you can't pay it. There might, to a point, not put you in jail, but eventually they can.
So the
You can.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Go
after
ahead.
you, sir. You were in the middle of the sentence.
I'm just saying you can at some, like, it's possible for them to hold you in contempt.
But why, again, why do you believe that, again, if they're outside the consensus, if they're outside the expert consensus?
Well, because it is possible for the court to hold you in
It's
contempt
not.
for not being fine.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not possible for the Human Rights Tribunal to hold you in contempt. The only way that can happen is if that goes to a federal court, a court above the Human Rights Tribunal. Because contempt of court is a criminal. It's part of the criminal code.
Sure,
It would
So
never
you're
be
in
heard.
contempt of the Human Rights Tribunal, and that goes to federal court, and then you get jailed.
Okay, so don't
But
commit
that's
criminal
possible.
contempt.
But that's possible.
Sure. And then, like I said, it's also possible that you can be jailed for playing your music too loudly.
Yeah, and again, the major difference has to do with those are specific, like the. Sorry, Weebo. Yeah, I see you.
Yeah, I just want to interject here. Playing your music too loudly can either be a village ordinance offense, or it can be seen as disturbing the peace. So do with that information what you will.
Weebo, shut
One
the fuck up.
results usually in just a simple fine, or both usually result
But
in
what
a
if you don't
simple
pay the fine? What if you don't pay the fine?
Yeah.
Then it's contempt of court, right?
Right.
You can use that same logic here. It doesn't matter what kind of, if it's civil ordinance, criminal ordinance, or I'm sorry, civil ordinance, city ordinance, or criminal law. It results in the same thing by this logic.
Yes, but in one instance, I would have to interject. One instance is whether or not you are saying something into the accordance of the law. The other is how loud it is that you are playing music, to the point that everyone else can hear it.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily make that comparison because they're very different in what it is they're doing, or how it is that they are disturbing the peace, or harassing other people, or interacting with other people, I'd say.
This is the same logic, though, right? If you can commit harassment by misgendering somebody, you can disturb the peace by playing music.
Yeah, but don't most cities have their own specific kind of rules
Yeah.
about volume
Yeah.
of music? Yeah. Okay, but again, that's a specific thing, a specific act committed by a person, not determined by how the person next to them feels about it.
Okay. The Canadian Bar Association is a conglomerate of legal experts who looked at C16. There's some 36,000 in members, and they say that nothing in Bill C16 will infringe upon the freedom of expression. And the Canadian Civil Liberties Association affirms the same thing. I can read what they wrote if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah, what they wrote was the main takeaway at this point should be that the laws have been circumscribed, have very circumscribed applicability. However, claims to the law's authoritarianism from the above demonstrations seem tenuous at best. That's what the Canadian Civil Liberties Association says about it. Jody Wilson-Raybould, who is the Canadian Minister of Justice, said that one cannot compel somebody to refer to somebody by the way of a pronoun or otherwise. There is nothing within Bill C-16 that will compel somebody to have to call somebody by the pronoun he, she, or otherwise. And this causes me to have to reiterate to you, Irving, nothing in C-16 leads to compelled speech or infringes upon free speech. Your claim is not supported by the experts.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's... Oh, dear God. Tenuous at best was the phrase they used?
That was the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, yes.
But not impossible.
Okay. What about the Canadian Attorney General saying that nothing in Bill C-16 compels somebody to have to call somebody else by a pronoun? I mean,
No,
that's
yeah,
pretty
and
clear.
That's where we've gotten to that point of, you're right. I don't have to talk about him/her or whoever. I don't have to. Right? But if I do, right? If I have no idea that one of my employees is a trans woman and I keep using guys and she's offended, I can get taken before the tribunal. Chain of events can occur.
I feel like you're grossly simplifying the tribunal again, and it's really disappointing to me. The Human Rights Tribunal has a charter, and its powers are limited in scope only to addressing grievances brought out by the Human Rights Act, like discrimination. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms lists freedom of expression as a fundamental freedom. So nothing in the Canadian Human Rights Act contravenes with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And if it did, there would have to be a court case about it, right? The free expression mandate is still there, and if it were to be stripped, it would come under something called an Oakes test in Canadian courts, which determines that if there is a rational, valid reason for restricting a fundamental right, it operates like our court's strict scrutiny tests, right? You're making this seem really cut and dry again, and it's really not. It's really much more complicated than you're giving it credit for.
No, I'm sure it is complicated, but one of the complex paths can lead from me calling someone guys to ending up in jail.
No. Why do you believe that? Again, I'm not clear where you get that idea.
Because the path is pretty clear. The policy determines...
Didn't you say it was ambiguous earlier?
The policy is too vaguely worded and makes this possible.
Well, if it's too vaguely worded, then the path is not clear. You can't have it both ways. Either it's vaguely worded or it's very clear.
So can I interject here?
Shoot.
Okay. So first off, thank you, Blessed Silence, for the 50. This seems like they're just going
Jesus
around
Christ,
in
that guy's
circle.
loaded.
Well, 50 and okay, which is basically like $6 in American currency.
Oh, okay.
But happy debate. Good night, Weebo. You're cool. Okay, so I do have to admit we are kind of going around in circles on the same point. If maybe one of you could come up with an example of what it is you're talking about to kind of get the ball rolling, Irv, if you have any evidence of this occurring, or Lispy, if you have any evidence. Well, you know, we're trying to prove. We're trying to prove. I'm sorry, you can't really prove a negative. So if that's the case, then do that, or we can move on to the next part of this, which is this an overreach?
Well, there is the criminal section, which can land you in jail, and we can talk about that if you want to get into that. To be frank, I'm not satisfied that you're ever going to change your mind on this topic, and it's really disappointing to me because I don't know what else I can say beyond just giving you source after source and expert after expert, and I mean, I took a deep dive into Canadian law for this. Like when you talk about the tribunal, like you have to very intentionally end up before the tribunal. Like if a person believes their rights have been violated under the Canadian Human Rights Act, they have to apply with the Human Rights Commission, which is separate from the tribunal. And if their application is approved, the commission has to initiate a mediation process. So basically just work out the differences between you and another person. The only way you end up before the tribunal is if you refuse the mediation process or if you appeal a settlement. And if the case goes to the tribunal, the burden of proof rests with the person who's complaining, not you. The one who alleges their rights have been violated has to make their case. If somebody tries to claim that you violated their rights under the Canadian Human Rights Act, you don't have to say a word to defend yourself because they have to prove you violated their rights. And I have to stress again, misgendering somebody is not grounds for complaint according to this law. But even if it were, they have to prove you misgendered them, and that doing so violated their rights under this law. You have no case law to support your assertion. So I think we should move on to the criminal section if you want, or we can talk.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, or if you want to talk about the whether or not this is a good law or not.
No, we can move on to the criminal code part. Because that's 318 and 319, right?
Yeah, we can talk about the criminal code. Have you read?
Oh, you don't want to?
We can, if you want to. I'm aggravated because I think you're still on. I think you still believe this, and I think even if I explain the criminal code, you're still going to believe it. It doesn't matter what I say.
Oh, the criminal code part. I don't think there's anything in there that's particularly.
You don't want to talk about the hate speech portion or the.
Oh, the hate speech stuff. That's ridiculous. It's all ridiculous.
Maybe.
It's like I don't like hate speech is free speech, man. The fact that we have hate speech laws is
well in the United States it is. Your courts disagree with you.
Yeah, I know.
If it makes you feel any better, part of me agrees that it's stupid. So I don't know what the debate would be necessarily there because I'm not entirely sure I believe hate speech laws myself, but like coming from a different angle, I think I understand them and sympathize with them.
Well, like in the hate speech laws, they talk about inciting to violence, right?
Oh, for the criminal code, yeah, specifically, it has to be an incitement to violence.
Well, there's also something about openly inciting to hatred. I think that's in 319.
Right, that's specifically talking about it has to rationally cause a breach of the peace or something like that.
Which is like impossible to prove.
Then no one would be prosecuted under it.
Well, yeah, I know, right?
I mean, that's another thing I found that was interesting when I looked into this is you guys have like no hate speech prosecution. Like it's on the books, but so few people ever get prosecuted under this, and it tends to makes its way through the court pretty vigorously. So it's interesting to me. I don't know.
Sorry, you're roboting there, or is it me?
I'm sorry. It's interesting to me. It is just you. Me or Irving?
It's just Irving, because I heard everything pretty clearly.
Oh, sorry.
But go ahead with yourself.
Anyway, my point was the courts don't even hear many hate speech laws because most people in Canada don't generally advocate for the genocide of people. It's very rare, apparently.
We're very polite up here, but yeah. And what's the other thing? The hate. Oh God, hate motivated.
Yeah. You
Crimes,
can't commit
like-
a crime against somebody just because they're trans. Which might be a thought crime. I mean, that's something worth discussing if you want to talk about that.
I think I hope we're going to be on the same side about that. But like, yeah, it's not something that happens up here because we're very polite in general, pretty open and accepting. But you know, when a native chick decides to scream out something like, was it "I hate white people" or "fuck white people," and then punch someone in the face so hard that she knocked out her tooth, that's not a hate crime.
Yeah.
That apparently was not motivated by hate. So
Yeah, I imagine. Well, like I said, those cases are typically very hard to prove anyway, which makes me like, if I were in Canada, I wouldn't even worry about the amendments to the criminal code because it sounds like basically nobody's going to be prosecuted under them. But yeah, so a conversation worth having. Is it a good thing to criminalize what's in people's heads when they commit a crime?
God, of course not.
Now, why do you say that?
First off, how do you prove what someone's thinking?
Through
So-
their actions.
Well,
I mean, if they're part of a white power gang and they're marching in Jewish neighborhoods picking fights, I think it's safe to assume it's probably because they hate Jews.
sure, yeah, no. I get it. But when they're picking fights with Jews, you prosecute them for that. If they're sitting around at home or just marching, right? Well, fuck them. You know, like, it's not until they actually commit a crime, I think, that this should become a problem.
Do you think there's a difference in crimes of passion and crimes motivated by hate? Like if I kill somebody because it was an argument that went too far, as opposed to killing them because I don't like black people, you don't think there's a substantive difference, but in terms of justice between those?
Hold on. Who's echoing? Is it me? Hold on, give me a second.
Yeah, it is you, I think, Irv. Because I'm not getting it from Lispy.
Okay, how's this? Better? All right. I'm not sure what you're asking me here.
I'm asking you is, in terms of justice, our abstract understanding of justice, is it worse to commit a crime against somebody because it was a passionate, heated moment than it is to commit a crime against somebody out of hatred, simply for the color of their skin?
Is it worse?
Yeah. As far as justice goes, is there a difference between these two?
We're talking about, yeah, basically heat of the moment and premeditation, yes?
Yeah. Basically.
Premeditation, obviously, is something worse. But the things in someone's head that they're thinking that maybe one day, right, or they're planning to do, like, even planning to do it might be considered a crime. Shit. But I still, yeah, no, if you're trying to go somewhere with this to try and say that there are some things that people think that should be illegal, you're going to have to convince me here.
No, I don't think there are things people think that should be illegal, but I do think that what people think should be considered an aggravating factor in their crimes. Because I think there's a monumental difference between committing a crime out of desperation and committing a crime out of hatred.
Again, it depends on the context. You're going to have to give me a specific example here.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Matthew Shepard?
Doesn't sound familiar.
Matthew Shepard was a gay man, 18, 19 years old. He's just a kid who got picked up by some guys outside of a bar, and they basically tied him like to a fence or something and just beat him to death and threw rocks at him and stuff because he was gay. And for no real purpose beyond that. They just simply disliked that Matthew Shepard was gay. Is that crime worse or better in terms of justice than a crime committed against Matthew Shepard because they were drunk and they got in a fight and it went too far?
So basically, if they had done the exact same thing but didn't know he was gay,
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. What? Is it?
Sure, it's worse. Yeah.
So the
To go like, let's go look for a faggot and string him up and beat him to death. Yeah, that's pretty horrific. On the other hand, I'm thinking if somebody hates gay people and then gets into a fight with someone at a bar and that person is gay, maybe they know they're gay, but they don't even start the fight, and they're charged with assault. I don't think it becomes it's not automatically an aggravating factor.
No, I'm not saying it should automatically be an aggravating factor. I don't want anything in law to be automatic, ever, in criminal law. I don't want anything in criminal law to be automatic. But I'm saying it should be considered as an aggravating factor if you can prove the motivation was based on hatred. And I think that's actually respectable as a position. Yes, ma'am.
So I would ask you guys to clarify what are current aggravating factors, because you're trying to make the case that doing something out of hate should be an aggravating factor that would land you more jail time, correct?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. So do we know what typical aggravating factors are that would increase jail time at the moment?
Well, in C-16, committing a crime against a trans person because they were trans is an aggravating factor, but as well as doing it against their race or religion or because of their sex or anything else. Like committing a crime against somebody because of any of these, they belong to some identifiable group is a crime. I'm sorry,
Okay.
is an aggravating factor in a crime.
So, pause for a sec. Thank you, Dog Dog, for the $2. Fuck this. Fuck LSP. You're cool, Weebo. I'm out.
Does he want to fuck me?
Lovely praise, everybody. You know what? You do have a pretty voice.
Thank you. We were... Thank you.
Alright, sorry. I'll let you guys get back to your stuff.
I don't think we're really disagreeing here. Like, this is just...
Well, I don't think we're disagreeing in the abstract, but you still would have a problem with this prescribed into law, right?
I'll tell you, they beat a kid to death. Like, how could it be worse? I don't even know. I'm still swinging back and forth.
I think the motive could make it worse. It's like yeah, effectively a guy dies. It's the same thing. But if my girlfriend had to die, I'd rather her die in a car accident than being murdered by some guy on the street. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean,
Sorry.
I don't.
I think so. You guys are trying to compare intent versus non-intent to commit, an act that would end up in one's death. And I think that the intent that you guys are disagreeing on is, is it motivated by, hatred of the specific group versus just hatred in general, or hatred less general? Because usually intent laws specifically stipulate like crime of passion, or
right. That's
I hate this person because they've wronged me personally versus I hate this person because of who they are. I'm just trying to clarify what we're talking about.
No, that's exactly right. It's the intent that matters.
But now I'm starting to wonder, the premeditation of it is the problem, right? These guys went out looking for somebody and beat him to death. That was the plan.
Yeah.
If they went out looking for a gay dude or a black dude, I don't know how you can say that's somehow worse than just looking for any other person. I'm not sure I'm convinced. Nah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a respectable position. I basically, even I'm kind of split on it. I'm not necessarily sure it's okay to prosecute somebody more severely because of what's in their head at the time they commit a crime. But I sympathize with the argument, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Ask me tomorrow, and my answer might be different about how I feel about these kinds of laws. It's like the death penalty. I'm on two different sides, different days of the week.
I get it. Like, I mean, I don't want someone to be discriminated against because they're black or gay or Jewish or all three and in a wheelchair. Like, that's obviously not, like, that's just not nice. And up here in Canada, we're generally pretty nice, so I don't want that. But to make it somehow an aggravating factor in the crime, that you went and beat up a black gay Jew in a wheelchair because you hate black gay Jews in wheelchairs. Well, you went out to look for somebody and beat the shit out of them. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. That's funny. So do you want to talk about this in like the civil sense? Like, should government prescribe by law protections for people against discrimination on the basis of race or sex or any of these things?
To be perfectly honest, I'm starting to swing to the no on this. And like, free market, free association, that kind of stuff. If you don't want to sell your product to black people, well, you just lost, you know, in the US, it's 13% of the whole market. All right, and guess what? What is it, 65% white people? A lot of them are going to be like, well, fuck you, and they're not going to buy your product either.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, and I hear this argument a lot, but we had a real experience historically with this very issue, and it wasn't fixed by the free market. It was fixed by big government.
Well, yeah. But it was already leaking through, right? Like, I mean, there were shops and schools that were no longer segregating and shit like that before the actual end of segregation.
Only because of court orders, right? So, like, you have Brown versus the Board of Education as like a famous court case that said that it is against the law, it is against constitutional law to segregate schools. Separate but equal is not a standard we can use. So if it leaked through, it was because of government. Like, it never leaked through because of the free market.
Okay, now I honestly don't know if this is true. Are you telling me that before government made this happen in the U.S., that there were there were no white-owned stores that would also serve black people?
I'm telling you that's largely true, yes.
Largely true. Okay, but that's the same. So there were white-owned stores that would serve black people.
Sure, I think there were some.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that those people were doing all right.
Apparently it wasn't hurting enough. It wasn't hurting the bottom line enough for other businesses to go to a multi-ethnic model. They were perfectly happy with discrimination. And this wound up having an adverse effect on the black people who were trying to find jobs to support themselves, or the black people who needed services, who needed utilities, who needed various different things to improve the quality of their life. I mean, imagine trying to find a job as a black guy when no white company is going to hire you. And imagine how much more difficult it is when no white tailor will serve you.
Yeah. Okay. As of now, do you think if we just removed all of those policies that it would go back to as far as it did?
No, but I'd say that's a little bit like, if I'm going to quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg, removing the policy is a lot like throwing away an umbrella because it's not raining right now. And I'd rather not do that. Like, the policies work just fine. Even if we removed it, it probably wouldn't go back to the same degree it went back before, but why take the chance? I suppose I'd ask it like this. Black people are paying white businesses taxes, or paying for police officers, paying taxes that support white businesses' police officers, and the roads they drive on, and the education their workers get. Black people are paying for all this stuff. Why shouldn't government prescribe by law a set of rules for everybody to participate by so that it's an equal playing field?
Well, okay. Roads and cops and public services, I don't think that would be something that, like, is this what we're talking about here?
No, what I'm saying is businesses that discriminate against black people get accommodations from public funding that are paid for by black people, as well as white people. They're paid for by black people. So why shouldn't government prescribe by law that if private businesses are going to reap all these benefits from black people, that they should serve black people as well?
That's interesting. Okay, and what are we talking about, like, for the businesses? Just
So you would have had
Like black people pay taxes. That helps build roads. The roads lead to the store, so black people have to be let in the store.
sure, and the
Okay.
because
Yeah.
the store
Oh,
profits.
yeah,
off
I guess
those
that makes
roads.
sense. Yeah, you know, I'm one of those filthy statists who goes, "What about my roads?"
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, I can understand it.
So I mean, do you support the Civil Rights Act now?
It definitely did what it had to do, but I mean, as it stands, like, I mean, if there's some dude who owns his bar and wants to put his whites only sign and only serve white people, whatever the fuck that means, I just don't care enough, and I just don't go to that bar personally, right? Like, if there's laws about it, fuck. Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know how to have this. Like, you're stirring some shit up in my head pretty well, though. It's pretty good.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Are you guys kind of strapped for things to say now?
yeah, we can go to the
The question portion?
yeah, since it was an hour and 15 as a limit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You wanted 4 hours, you wanted 45, so now we're at that nice happy middle area.
I couldn't have stretched this to 4 hours if I tried.
No. Yeah.
There's only so much you can talk about with law. Okay, so we have quite a few questions here. Some of them are kind of repeats. Tennessee Marine, TM. So they can't jail you, but they can send it to a higher court if you don't abide by their decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John Zoidberg, MD, with basically two of the same question. Basically, he's asking who selects these civil adjudicators. I'm sorry, my English is very difficult right now. What is the selection process for these tribunals? Are the tribunals elected, selected, appointed for life? I'm hearing an echo. Are we good? No, I can still hear it.
From who?
I turned my mic off. It's you.
Yeah, Herb was muted, so I think it's you.
No, it's you.
It's
I'm
me?
moving no, I'm just moving my mic away.
Okay.
Sorry.
I
what
still
was
hear
the question?
myself.
Ah, yeah.
I can still hear myself.
I
Is
have
it
to
really
turn it
me?
down. Hang on.
Okay, sorry.
Hang on. Like, it's not like I'm next to my speakers. I'm actually not. Go for
Okay.
it. Sorry.
Okay. No, I can still hear myself.
What? Really?
Yes. No,
From
not
me?
anymore. No, no. Yeah, I can.
How about now?
Hello?
How
Oh,
about
no.
now?
No.
Okay.
Who selects these? What is the selection process for these tribunals? Are the tribunals selected, elected, appointed for life? From John Zoidberg, MD.
Good question. I don't even know, man. I'm sorry.
I'm actually not sure myself. That's,
Okay.
admittedly,
That
it's something I
would
should have
probably
looked
be-
up. I'm sorry?
I'd pro-
Did anyone else hear her robot?
be a good thing. Huh?
I think you just roboted. Oli, you roboted to me.
You roboted to me.
But it's not me this time. Right on.
Alright. So you guys don't know. Gotcha. Tennessee Marine TM asks, we will please ask them to clarify or talk about if this civil court can by proxy lead to someone going to jail. I think we already answered that question, but you want to keep it succinct.
Sorry, Tennessee, because I'm going to say yes, and LSP's going to say no.
It's a contended issue right now at the moment, which I don't think we're gonna get like an agreement on at any point. So, because this is Kyle. So the courts asks. So the courts can still hold a punishment against you for misgendering someone, right? Which I think is
No.
LSP's going to say no. I'm going to say yes.
It's not a thing.
the contested issue between our guests tonight. All right. Mr. Monkeylint asks, Question. Law is built on the logical analysis of evidence and testimony. How can they justify the concept of I feel means you are punished?
They don't. You have to present evidence.
Hostile jeep spotted. Over.
I think this works under the presupposition that I think this question is formulated under the presupposition that essentially you believe that they are being punished, but you're okay with it. But at that point, the origins of the question are kind of false. Roasted opinions at Weebo Jones. Is it possible the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal could find someone in violation contrary to the federal court precedents? I have no fucking clue. I didn't do any research for this debate at all. I have absolutely no opinion.
No,
I
you
am
just
an
relied on
impartial
me.
moderator. Gentlemen?
It is weird because the commission and the tribunal don't necessarily require proof beyond a reasonable doubt, right? They can go with preponderance of evidence and, find whatever they want, so to speak. Sorry, didn't mean to be so flip about it, but they can find, that this is sufficient evidence, and then that is the ruling. So if you end up in contempt and that gets taken to a higher court, the ruling, I'm pretty sure, will stand in the higher court.
I take issue with the way you phrase that again. I think it's one of those gross simplification things. If you want to say that they can just find whatever they want, then by that logic, any court could just find whatever they want.
That was flip. I didn't mean to be so flip. They can preponderance of evidence and say, yes, this is harassment, but without...
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we can go over criminal
without
harassment, but that's
yeah.
separate from C-16. You would never go to jail for civil harassment.
Alright. Next question. This is Kyle. So my concern is that can someone still be punished in any way for misgendering somebody?
Nope.
Yeah.
They're all asking different forms of the same question.
Yeah.
That's
How
why-
about this? Sorry, chat, for this one. You guys are gonna have to go do your own research on Canadian human rights, and you figure it out. Listen to the experts. Listen to the dissenters. Do the research yourself, and yeah,
It's worth saying Jordan Peterson is not an expert.
that's true.
Alright. Lucifer never changes. At Lispy, you are not understanding just... That's not a question, but I thought it would be...
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding
Interesting
what.
for you to
I
get
didn't hear
your-
that.
Okay, so the question... Well, not question. It wasn't a question, but I thought it would be interesting to get your intake on this. Lispy, you are not understanding just because this has not happened does not mean it wouldn't happen in the future.
Okay, tell him to DM me, and we'll fight about it, because
Alright.
I don't know how much clearer I can explain this.
Somebody just triple bracket experts in the chat.
Oh, fuck off.
How is that different from, like, the triple parentheses?
It's not.
They mean the same thing, then? For those of you who aren't familiar with the Weebo Jones channel, I'm naive, and I'm learning everything as I go.
Oh, okay. You know what that is then, right?
What?
The echo quotes?
No, I know what that is. I had
Okay.
Twitter explain it to me. Months ago, man. Back when everyone wanted to make babies with me because they wanted to save the white race, or they didn't want to talk to me because I'm a filthy Jew.
Are you Jewish?
That's a good question. I am missing about a quarter of my entire lineage, so I could very well be anything, as far as I know.
Probably a Jew. They're only like less than % of the world, but everybody's a Jew.
Yep, apparently. So that's actually an up in the air issue. Take your chances, gents. The 1L train, isn't that basically saying you're compelled to not speak? I think this is within reference to what you guys were kind of hung up on for a time there during the convo.
Banned speech, compelled speech.
There's another word for compelled not to speak. It's banned speech.
Did he robot for you too, Arv?
He did. It's not me. That's
Oh,
up.
God. What do you want from me? I have a shitty internet. You guys gonna pay
Adjust
for
your
a better
bandwidth,
internet?
bastard. Boy.
Girl,
Fam.
woman,
Guys.
bitch.
Guys.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, is that basically saying you're compelled to not speak? We were missing Lispy's answer.
Yeah, I said being compelled not to speak has another word. It's banned speech. It's the same thing. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's the same thing.
Okay.
I'm not roboting again, right?
In simplified answers, these are good. These are good.
This is Kyle again. Same question as last time, so I think we're gonna skip it.
Yeah.
X17, Xaventian. It's an interesting name. So what he's saying is that we can lose the ability to use pronouns altogether to avoid fines from the Civil Liberties Tribunal.
I'm literally saying you can use whatever pronouns you fucking want. It's not against the law. I don't
Okay.
know how many times I have to say that. I'm saying it very clearly, I think.
You might want to say it once more in Pig Latin, just for the people in the
Seriously,
back.
yeah. Use whatever pronouns you want. If you want to misgender somebody, knock yourself out. There's nothing in the law that's going to stop you.
Okay, you heard it here, folks. That's the final time he's going to say that question
The
or that
final
answer.
time. Until the
The
next
final
time.
time.
Until
You
the
done?
next time.
Faith is abdication of reason. What if my free expression is to insult trannies and LGBT people?
Knock yourself the fuck out.
Do you, boo boo? All right. Rich at art. Weebo Jones. So Irving is basically saying that they want to care about the law. They'll still hang on. So Irving is basically saying they won't care about the law. I'm so sorry. My eyes are fucked up. They won't care about the law. They still prosecute you.
No.
No. What are you saying then?
No. Okay. Look, the bill made changes to the Human Rights Act. The policies that determine what's discrimination and harassment are vaguely worded enough that misgendering someone can be seen as harassment. That's the position I'm taking. LSP says that's not correct. But, and yeah, he's not wrong. This hasn't happened yet. But I don't know
It's
Like-
not even going to happen.
if it...
Essentially,
yeah,
what we have is a difference of interpretation of the law.
Well, not even that. I mean, why find... Okay, so... I made it no secret that I wasn't interested in addressing this issue because a claim of fact is either true or it's untrue, right? So in this case, it's an untrue claim. And to say that it's based on is true, it's based on spirit math, and you're presenting an unfalsifiable position that I can't disprove, and that's a little bit annoying. So you feel it's true based on your limited understanding of Canadian law and your misunderstanding of provincial courts. The law doesn't say what you say it does. The experts don't say what you say it does. You have no case law on your side. And the last time we spoke, I remember asking this very vividly. Why has nobody been jailed yet? And you said, give it time. Give it 5 years. Like every Canadian province, but a few, have had transgender protections like C-16 already added to their provincial law. You've had 5 years. You've had 6 years, actually. And you still have no case law. You still have no evidence. And you still haven't proven your assertions.
Button. What's button?
Well, I'm sorry. Did I cut out? Did everyone hear me?
Yeah, you cut out the last
Fuck
maybe
me.
5 seconds of your spiel.
Okay, well, I said that Canadian provinces have had the same protection prescribed into law for a while now.
Oh,
Ontario's had it for at least 5 years. Actually, they've had it for 6 years, and there's still no case law.
Okay. Next question. X17, Xavention. So, now he's saying that while it's prescribed that you can't misgender someone, it's entirely unenforceable by the rights tribunal.
Is that a question? What?
What?
It had a question marks away. I just, I don't like it when people try to essentially assume what it is that you're saying in a different form of the way that you're saying it. So I
Why
give
is
you
your
guys the
chat so
opportunity.
retarded?
Chat. Don't insult my chat. They
Oh,
have
okay.
opinions.
I'm sorry. They have opinions about me. I ain't said shit yet. But they keep asking the same question in different ways.
That's them. Magog of Morscar asks, fall back on actual tribunal cases, how many people have been fined or punished by the tribunal for saying something wrong? I guess that would be a good thing. If you guys wanted to find any evidence of that, it'd be a little bit more broad, looking for actual case law in the sense of the tribunal.
And I think I roboted out a little bit. I didn't hear Magog's question or statement, whatever it was.
Sorry. He said, fall back on actual tribunal cases. How many people have been fined or punished by the tribunal for saying something wrong? That would be an interesting thing to look into in terms of test cases that would support that the tribunal does essentially compel what a person can and can't say by means of, civil and non-punishment.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually looked. Well, I looked specifically for C16 claims, and I couldn't find much of anything that wasn't ordinary forms of discrimination, if that makes sense.
Irv is so intent on this. His position with regards to C16 is because
I know.
I don't want to speak for Irv, but it sounds like he's coming from a place of this has happened before with other laws, so it might happen again. But it's law yet, so we can't assume that this would happen until it has. Just to kind of quantify each of your positions. Am I?
Yes, but I mean it's really aggravating and disappointing to me that we live in a world where people can't admit they're wrong, and that people aren't humble enough that nothing was going to change their mind. And I have to ask Irving, what would it take to sway you? What else do I have to bring to you?
It's not what you have to bring to me. It's this policy, all right, that includes this discrimination and harassment definitions. Okay, if they were removed or altered, then that would be proof to me that it's not possible.
So then you're never going to believe it. No matter what, you're going to believe this can jail you because they're not going to alter the language, right?
I'm believing what I'm reading.
Okay.
Okay. So Faith's Abdication of Reason has asked, why is C16 needed? So...
Oh, hey, you can make a case that it isn't needed. I think that's actually a respectable opinion that's worth debating. But that's not what we were here for. And I really wish we could start on that, but we can't do that if we can't agree on what the facts are. And if you're misinterpreting C16, then we're never going to be able to agree on what C16 should be if we can't agree on what C16 is.
All right.
I'm all for more fruitful conversations about what the world should look like as opposed to what the world is. But these conversations are hard to have since everybody has a different idea about what is. Are you guys hearing me, or I can't tell if I'm cutting out?
No, you're fine. I was just waiting to see if Irv had anything to add to that. I'm trying to be the hands-off moderator.
You're doing great, Weebo.
Thank you.
Are you drunk?
No. Me?
Why the fuck when I ask you you're drunk? Irving, are you drunk?
Not a drop.
Okay.
Not a drop.
I'm proud of you, buddy.
Oh, thanks, man.
That would make this a bit more interesting, I'm not gonna lie.
No, it wouldn't be. Beating up a drunk guy is like beating up a retarded guy. I don't want to do that.
Alright. Nothing for you. We're on the last 4 questions, guys. So
Alright, cool deal.
Bear with me, gents. Nothing for you here. My question would be, should a government compel the speech of its citizens? Not insofar as saying,
you can't say some things, but in that they must say certain specific things, and then he added me. So, does he want me to ask a question, or
Why don't we all answer?
I think it's like a question for everybody. So I'll let one of you guys go first, and then I guess I'll state my position.
Ladies first, after you.
Ladies, did you just call Herb a lady?
No, I called you a lady. I'm telling you. Why don't you go ahead and answer?
I'm a trap though.
I'm sorry. Fuck.
And to be honest, I didn't hear the question. I'm not sure if I'm roboting or what.
Okay, I'll repeat, no worries. My question would be, should a government compel the speech of its citizens? Not insofar as saying that they can't say some things, but in that they must say certain specific things. So I would say that no, the government shouldn't compel your speech in any sense of the word, because compelled speech is essentially compelled thought as well. And I think that people should make up their own minds based on their own experiences and their own, the information that they gather throughout, their existence. Full stop.
Irving?
Sounds like a decent answer to me.
I mostly agree.
I
with
agree
you.
with Weebo.
Yeah, I mostly agree with you, but I think there are certain situations where it's justifiable for government to compel my oaths of allegiance when they're giving me a gun to serve this country. I think it's okay for government to compel my speech when I'm a witness in a crime, and my testimony can mean the difference between justice and anarchy. And I basically it's very nuanced, and there are certain situations where I think it's okay. But generally, I would agree with you that you want speech to be as free as possible.
So you would compel speech in the course of justice, in the course of taking responsibility for that specific country,
Yeah.
and well, those caveats are understandable, and I can get behind those as well. My position was more general. I didn't really go into the specifics because I wanted to keep it kind of succinct.
A world
Earth?
with nuance is a beautiful world. You should-
Yeah,
It is. I know.
pretty much the same.
Okay,
That's it.
so then we're all kind of in agreement on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Faith is abdication of reason. Hate crime puts a higher value on the lives of protected classes. Do you guys have anything kind of to say about this claim? I thought it would be interesting to bring it up.
No. The claim's even wrong. Hate crime doesn't put... Okay, so people are divided into classes no matter what, even if you're a privileged class. Like, if somebody I know Irving's going to disagree with this, but if somebody commits a crime against you on the basis of your race, if they discriminate against hiring you on the basis of your race, even if you're white, even if you're male, even if you're cisgendered, they've still committed a crime under this. Like, it says all race. Like, race can't be a standard for anything. It doesn't just say the black race, the white race, the Jewish race, the Mexican race, or anything like that. Does that make sense?
Irv.
See, it's probably my internet this time. I'm not hearing. Whoa.
I'm
That's
hearing a lot of echoey. And it's not when I speak. So does that make it music? No. Wouldn't make me. Hang on.
Is it me? No. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to hear a question?
Yeah. Where Sure.
Okay. Faith's abdication of reason says hate crimes put a higher value on the lives of protected classes. Because we were talking about that when I got into that.
And LSP, you were saying something like, not really, because race is so general that it means each and every race. You can't discriminate because white, black, fill in the blank,
it
right?
doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't single out.
Yeah,
a
I agree
specific
with that.
class of people. It just says every
Sorry?
class. Sorry.
Right, and I agree with that in the principle of it, but I'm fairly certain that sometimes in its execution, it seems to be that it's kind of okay sometimes to discriminate against white people or white men, and people don't actually get in trouble for it.
Maybe. Do you have any specific examples?
Well, I mean, even some people have been arguing the concept of affirmative action actually can be basically discriminatory against whites and males, right?
You could argue that. People do argue that. I can recite to you what the Supreme Court opinion was on that, if you like.
It's up to you, sure.
Well, the government has a compelling interest in diversity of thought, diversity of experience, these sorts of things that promote a better learning atmosphere or that promote better business, and that can supersede a single individual's right to any kind. Like, you're not entitled to a job and you're not entitled to a university. It's a meritocracy. And one thing we've learned, I know Weebo's going to disagree with this. Weebo, I've read the study you gave me. But black people sometimes get passed up on applications that they submit for jobs, even if they have the exact same credentials as white people, simply because they have black-sounding names. So I see affirmative action as a corrective course that betters society overall. And sometimes, I mean, I can even agree that it could be discriminatory, but it can also be a necessary evil. And I'm not sure that I'm necessarily against discrimination in all circumstances. Like, I'm okay with discriminating against the homeless.
Irving, is he roboting for you?
Look out, I spotted a hostile jet. Over.
Can you hear me?
You're
roboting for a second.
yeah.
So do I need to repeat that?
You stopped up. Yeah, repeat that.
So I'm not necessarily against discrimination on its face. I think if there is going to be discrimination, it has to serve a valuable purpose to bettering society. So I guess I would delineate discrimination as positive and negative discrimination. I'm for positive discrimination. I'm for negative discrimination. But that's all a matter of perspective. So I'm sure. I mean, I can understand a disagreement with that.
Roboting.
Fuck. I can't help with that.
Because sorry, that how did you phrase it? Something about that the greater good that's coming out of it supersedes a single person's rights.
Yes, it can. I said I'm okay with discrimination if it serves a positive societal purpose.
And that was the Supreme Court position also?
That was more or less what their opinion was. That basically universities benefit from diversity, and
sure,
since university policy.
But I just don't like.
Yeah.
I just don't like that the individual then is that they don't. That individual is suddenly not offered the protection that's written out there in the same law, and that seems like it shouldn't be that way. You know what I mean?
I generally agree. I would generally agree if I knew that everybody in the real world would act in a non-discriminatory manner without the law. But I think there is evidence after evidence that that's just not the case, and that makes these laws necessary.
Mm.
All right. Last two. And then with your evening, X17 Exvention asks, I think there is a problem with the conflict between the Civil Rights Act and the freedom of association. Is that the core issue here?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree that that's the core issue. That is the core issue. You have a freedom to associate. You should have a freedom to associate. You should have a freedom to run your business how you want. But that freedom has to be tailored in such a way that benefits everybody, because your business lives on other people providing for it in terms of police protection or in terms of the education of your workforce. It's basic social contract.
Irv?
I have no idea.
Okay. Last question then. Bubonic for you. Ask the libtard if he understands the difference between a commodity and a public good. Blacks only is all over the place.
A commodity is something valuable, and a public good is something everybody has equal access to. These are economic terms. Why is he asking me about economics on a debate about Bill C-16?
Well, because I think the debate turned from C-16 into
Okay.
something completely different at the end of it.
Oh, he's going to argue that whites receiving police protection for their businesses is a public good and not a commodity, so they don't owe the black community anything. I disagree. Public goods or commodities are all funded by taxpayers as a collective. You have obligations to those taxpayers. I don't think that's outrageous.
Sorry, I don't think anybody noticed. But I'm back.
Good to have you back then.
I missed some of bubonic for you. Was that I missed that.
Hang on. Ask the libtard if he understands the difference between a commodity and a public good. Blacks only is all over the place.
Do I have to answer that question a second time?
No.
No, you don't have to answer it a second time.
Okay, good.
Because this was just directed at you.
And no, you're a
this veto.
libtard. Shut up. What I do?
I'm the libtard, okay. Anyway, so that was the last question, and I wanted to end on a fun note, so... closing statements or final thoughts or what have you. I guess we can close this out. You guys have any final statements or closing thoughts?
I made it clear I wasn't interested in debating this because I want the conversation to be dictated by the facts. I think it would be more fruitful to have a conversation about how the world should be, but that's not what ended up happening. Whether C-16 is a good law or a bad law is a separate conversation. With that said, I apologize, Irving, if I was too aggressive. I'm a passionate debater, and I don't know how to shut up. I thank you for showing up, and I want to give a special thanks to our lovely host, Weebo, and I leave you to your closing remarks.
Yeah, like, I mean, this was less productive than, you know, and you haven't convinced me. You know, I haven't convinced you. That's the way it's going to stand for now, but at least it was relatively civil. You weren't too heated. You know what I mean? You get passionate. That's good. And yeah, you know, good talk. If unproductive, and maybe next time, if there's a next time, we can talk about yeah, whether or not it's good. And yeah, thank you both. Thank you, Weebo, for hosting.
All right.
Great job.
Nice. Thank you both for coming out tonight. I know it was a struggle. The talking part, not the getting here part. Thank you, chat, for coming out. If anyone in the near future or in the chat has their own bid, my email is in the description of this video. You can hit me up anytime you want. I'm down to host and be an impartial moderator, as impartial can get when you live and you breathe and you have biases and opinions and such. I'm the silent moderator type, so I won't get in your business too much. But thank you, chat, for coming out. Thank you, my guests, and thank you, super chatters, for super chatting. And I'll see you when I see you on SideQuest tomorrow night. Peace. And then there's the even funnier part where I get both sides of the fence of, can I save the white race with you? And then I also get you fucking Jew. Because apparently I'm super Jew.
I think the lamest like pickup line I'd ever asked somebody was like, you want to commit white genocide with me?
No, the absolute best and worst pickup line is, "Hey girl, are you a school? Because I want to shoot kids inside you."
I'm gonna use that.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. God bless this country.
Yeah.